In this short video, we try to look at your rights as air passenger and what the obligation of the airline are to you as a passenger on their flight. There are certain things that you are entitled to as an air passenger that some of these airlines might not even tell you, and perhaps you might not even know some of these things because you have not really bothered to look at them. You have certain rights as a passenger, and when some of these rights are violated, you have a right to actually petition the NCAA, which is the Civil Aviation Authority, or even the Consumer Protection. And in some cases, you can actually pursue some of these cases and drag the airline to the courts. We've seen cases where people drag airlines to court and they win some of these cases. If you feel that your rights have been violated as an air passenger, you can actually sue the airline and get them to address some of the issues in the law court. Hello, my name is Aladende. Today on this edition of the show, we'll try to look at the Nigerian aviation sector and what are your rights as a passenger in the Nigerian airspace. Oftentimes in Nigeria and even across Africa, we hear of cases of delayed flights, of cancelled flights, of missing luggages and all of that. This is coming in the context of the recent crisis between Air Peace, a major Nigerian airline, and the Emir of Kano. It was reported that the Emir of Kano was coming all the way from Banjul, the capital of the Gambia, to Lagos, and he booked a flight from Banjul to Lagos and another flight from Lagos to Kano. But unfortunately, the flight from Banjul was delayed for about 1 hour. So when they got to Lagos, they missed the flight from Lagos to Kano. It was reported that one of the aides of the Emir of Kano tried to convince the management of Air Peace to delay the Lagos to Kano flight. But of course, the airline declined. And of course, since then we've had counter arguments and arguments. We've had several allegations of poor treatment of passengers and all of that. And expectedly, across Nigerian social media platforms, the conversations have been so intense and people have been divided on whether the Emir of Kano protocol officer was right or whether the airline was right in declining some of the request made by the Emir of Kano protocol office. In the light of that, there have been conversation around the right of passengers using airlines in Nigeria and what the experiences have been in the last couple of years. If you're a regular air passenger in Nigeria, you would have had experiences of missing baggages or cancelled flights or delayed flight. Oftentimes, people don't press charges or even pursue some of these cases to any logical conclusion because they don't have time to pursue that, oftentimes because they have other things to do and they don't have enough time to do that. Or sometimes people don't even know their rights as air passengers. In case you're joining us for the first time, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so that other people can have access to this video and other videos I will be sharing in the next couple of weeks. And please do comment on our videos so that other people can have access to some of the information that we're sharing here. Now let's get into the major takeaways. According to the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority regulation, as well as some of the regulation of the Federal Consumer Protection Council, there are certain things that you are entitled to as an air passenger that some of these airlines might not even tell you. And perhaps you might not even know some of these things because perhaps you have not really bothered to look at them. You have certain rights as a passenger, and when some of these rights are violated, you have a right to actually petition the NCAA, which is the Civil Aviation Authority, or even the Consumer Protection. And in some cases, you can actually pursue some of these cases and drag the airline to the courts. We've seen cases where people drag airlines to court and they win some of these cases. So it is possible to actually, if you feel that your rights have been violated as an air passenger, you can actually sue the airline and get them to address some of the issues in the law court. Cases of missing air flight is very common in Nigeria. And according to the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, in 2019 alone, there were 41,968 recorded cases of missing and delayed luggages in Nigeria. In the same year, the NCA recorded operation of about 65,401 flights, of which 37,510 were delayed. According to the NCAA, the number of delayed flights in that year was 51% of the overall flights that we had within the year. Interestingly, within the same year, 356 flights were cancelled. In most of the cases of delayed or cancelled flights, passengers never even bothered to ask the airlines what was wrong or what were the rights that had been violated as air passengers. Oftentimes, because people are traveling, they have different connecting flights to make, they really don't bother to press charges or even to address some of the rights that have been violated. In some other cases, they don't believe in the system or they feel the regulator might not actually address some of the issues that they will raise. In most other cases, they are not even aware of their rights as air passengers. Now let's get into the right that you have as an air passenger. According to the NCAA regulation, every passenger on a flight deserves the right to be informed of a possible delay in flight at least 30 minutes before the said delay. When the delay lasts for 2 hours, the passenger is entitled to refreshment, and when it is more than 2 hours, about 3 hours, the passenger is entitled to reimbursement. Now, often in Nigeria, you see cases of airline abandoning their passengers at the airport, oftentimes when they have connecting flight or they delay the flight from maybe in the night till the next morning. You find passengers getting stranded at the airport, finding where to lodge and all of that. These are things that the airlines are supposed to address, and according to NCAA regulation, if you have a delayed flight between the time of 10 p.m. in the night and 4 a.m. in the morning, the airline deserves to actually provide accommodation and transport for you as a passenger. Now, when you have this kind of situation, it is your right to actually demand for this. And in cases where the airline fails to address this, you have the right to petition the NCAA and address this. Or in some cases, if you have no confidence in the NCAA as a regulator, you can take the matter to the court. Now, in the case of a cancelled flight, your passenger is entitled to compensation by the airline when the flight is cancelled, unless the said passenger is informed of the cancellation at least 24 hours before the scheduled departure time. If as a passenger you're placed in a lower class ticket, then you have a right to redress. And what the NCAA regulation says is that you're entitled to reimbursement within 30 days from the date of travel. The airline is also required to make an additional payment of 30% and 50% of the price of the ticket for domestic and international flight, respectively. One of the commonest concerns that we always see in air travel is delay in baggage or even missing baggages. Now, there are several regulations and rules guiding your right as a passenger in terms of the airline handling of your baggage. For instance, as a passenger, you're entitled to immediate monetary compensation by the airline in event of a baggage delay, as well as the carriage of the said delayed baggage on the next available flight. Where the airline delays your baggages, you have a right to seek redress and drag them to the regulator. Now, how do you seek compensation in cases where your rights have been violated? The simplest of methods is to actually file your complaint to the NCAA by sending them through the Corporate Affairs Division or even through the Consumer Protection Regulation. And in some other cases, you can actually address or copy the Federal Consumer Protection Agency, that's the FCPC, in cases where you think that you need to inform them so that you have a major case to make. In terms of filing your complaint to the NCAA, there's a major clause to that. You must understand that before you can actually have a legitimate case at the NCAA, your case must be filed within a 2-year period within which the said violation occurred to you. The said violation of your right. If your right has been violated by an airline, you must file your complaint at least within the first 2 years of the occurrence of the said violation. Now, what are the things that you need to do if you're filing your complaint to the NCAA? As a passenger, you need your ticket or booking number, date of the flight, name of the airline, and if possible, reason given by the airline for the flight delay or cancellation. Now, you can forward this information with claim letter detailing the passenger's experience with the airline and the inconvenience caused to you by the airline. Oftentimes, because people don't get redress when they address their complaint to the airline, we assume that the airlines are not as responsible as we think. But we have found cases where people address their complaint to the airlines and their issues were treated. So the first thing that you can do by default is to send your complaint to the airline, and you can expect that sometimes you might have your issues addressed even by the airline. It is very possible. Airlines have different ways of addressing some of the complaints. You can send emails to some, you can address a written letter to some other airlines, and you take it to their office. Now, the interesting part of this is that if the airline chooses to reject your complaint, you can file it onward to the Consumer Protection Unit of the NCAA. And in some cases, if the NCAA decides to reject your complaint, then you can file it to the Federal Consumer Protection Council, the FCPC. If the FCPC too decides to reject your complaint, then you can file the case through your lawyers and get the case to the courts. So in that case, if your petition doesn't work on the part of the regulator or the airlines or the consumer protection, then you can take the case to court. And you have a right as a passenger to have your rights addressed by the court. So it's important that we understand this right, so that we have some of the violations that we see in the airline, the aviation space can be brought to the barest minimum, or if possible, erased in totality. But the bottom line is that we should try as much as possible to familiarize ourselves with our rights as passengers and the basic ways of seeking redress when we find our rights have been violated by airlines. I mean, sometimes the biggest threat to we getting redress is ignorance of what our rights are. Because if you don't understand what the rights are, there's no possibility that you can actually pursue redress. So it's important that we understand what the rights are so that we can actually address some of these violations. If you fly in Nigeria, there's a possibility you might have experienced either delayed flight, cancelled flight, missing luggages, or all of that. Let us know what your experiences have been in the comment section, and let us know how you think other people who have similar experiences can do to seek redress in cases of violation of rights as air passengers. Now that's it for today. Thank you for being a part of this engagement. In case you're joining for the first time, please again subscribe to this channel, like our videos, share them on your platform and different other platforms across social media. And of course, invite your friends to subscribe to our channel so you have this kind of content going forward. Until I come your way next time, my name is Oladende. Bye-bye.